Usually, when you give a commemorative speech, it's on someone who gave their life in combat, or maybe raised thousands of dollars for a charity, or sometimes it's for someone famous who did something that no one has ever done before. Well, this is not that sort of commemorative speech. Today, I'm going to tell you about an ordinary guy who died way before his time, but in my house, he remains a legend. My Grandaddy Dan, my mother's father, died at age 45 from a massive heart attack. My mother buried him one Saturday, 26 years ago, a week before she walked down the aisle. No one gave her away, but the way that she tells it, her father still did. She had multiple offers from her mother, her sister, her stepdad, and even her grandfather to walk her down the aisle, but she says that no one could have taken his place. So I guess this is where my story begins. My mom always talked about her dad like he was the coolest guy everyone has ever met. And my brother is actually named after him, and I apparently look just like him, so I guess that's what makes it so special to me. After having a long, heartfelt conversation with my mother, I hope that I can represent my grandfather and share with you why I believe he's still a legend within our family. Throughout this speech, I'll break down into the following: a brief background of his family, his career, and his personality, who he was as a father and a husband, and one of my favorite memories that was shared. So now that I've given you a brief introduction as to who he is, I'd like to share some things that made him who he was. Dan Gorlick was a jack of all trades. He was a master sergeant in the Air Force, running a fulling sector in West Virginia. He was also a bartender at the Officers Club there for over 20 years. He was a master brick mason and made the house that my grandmother still lives in today. But his career was only a small portion of what made him so amazing. He had two daughters, one brother, and two ex-wives. He was a horseman and always had a dog. His smile was infectious, and his eyes were so blue that the sky would be jealous. He was so loud and obnoxious, but somehow he still drew people in. My mother said he had some pretty interesting quirks too. Mom said that he would work his peanut butter into a perfect cone shape inside of the peanut butter jar and would get so angry if anyone tried to mess with it. The staples in the fridge and the pantry were things like Caro syrup, marshmallow fluff, Velveeta cheese, and an old jar of bacon grease. He loved breakfast. He loved it so much that they would have it for dinner at least 3 times a week. His personality is what made him who he was as a father and as a husband. But what is so touching to me is how much he reminds me of my father. As far as an ordinary father, I guess no one would really have described him as just that. He was crazy, generous, the life of the party, and those were just a few things that were said about him. Some of my favorite stories about him are those of him being an overprotective father. When my mom and aunt would go to the officers' club, they would be talking to some random guys, and then mysteriously they would just disappear. Mom said that the guys would find out that their father was Sergeant Gorlick, and he would talk to them and tell them that it's fine if you talk to them or even date them, but if you hurt those girls or break their hearts, I will make you suffer. Apparently, the fun-loving guy had a very scary side when it came to his little girls, just like my father did. She doesn't even visit the cemetery because she knows that he was always with her. She said that there are so many things that she misses about him. The way that he smelled, the way that he could dance, and the fact that he never got to meet me or my siblings. Even my grandmother told me that he was the love of her life. They had some bad times and didn't work out, but she still said that he was the most generous man that she had ever met. He was the guy that everyone would call when they needed something. He would drop anything and everything to save the day. He would even put $100 bills in places so that whenever his family would find them, it would just put a smile on their face and sometimes just be what they needed. And he even considered it mad money when they found it. She said that he must have been the go-to guy at work as well. My grandmother told me that the colonel at his military base requested an illegal flyby for the funeral. The entire cemetery was lined full of military men and women from different bases all over the U.S. who had come just because my grandfather had impacted their lives. Obviously, this man had a wonderful family and so many friends that he couldn't keep track. So this leads me to tell me about one of my favorite stories that my mom shared with me. Now, I know this guy seems like a blast when it came down to these stories. This guy knew anyone and everyone. Mom said in high school she would go on freight runs with him just to hang out and catch up. Everywhere they went, he had a nickname for those people that knew him. It would be like he had never met a stranger. He had the habit of calling these people Bo. Hey, Bo, what's up, Bo? How's it going, Bo? And Mom would say, do you actually know their name? Is that their name? And Granddaddy Dan would just say, well, I don't know. The funny thing is that no one seemed to mind. They all took this loving nickname, Bo, and just kind of went with it. According to my mom, my aunt, and my grandmother, this also meant that Granddaddy Dan always knew how to get anywhere and everywhere. He could give the road names, the numbers, as well as landmarks without even looking at a map. And of course, the weirdest thing is that he would know which Cracker Barrel was where every trip that they went on. This story always got to me because it makes me wish so bad that I got to meet this man. In this speech, I covered a brief background of his family, his career, and personality, how he was as a father and a husband, and some of my favorite memories that were shared from my mother. So you know how sometimes you wonder why you are the way that you are? I listen to my mom tell these stories about her dad, and I don't always have to wonder. I am my mother's daughter, and she just so happens to be her father's daughter, and I know this will always be a huge part of me.